Okay, so welcome everyone to our second session of our Thank God It's Monday challenge. We have people from all over the world, so good morning to those in America, good afternoon to those in Europe, and good night, Asia. I think that if it's true that crises are an opportunity for growth, what's going on right now, hold on one second because I'm hearing myself and that's not good. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, if it's true that crises are an opportunity for growth, what's going on right now is definitely the greatest growth opportunity humanity has ever had. So with that in mind, we thought that it would be a great idea to ask some of the world's top thought leaders what, in their opinion, were the biggest opportunities hiding behind the coronavirus crisis. That's how we came up with the idea of this webinar series. And the idea is to generate a thought stream that provides a 360-degree view from multiple angles: business, health, politics, technology, and so on how the world should change once the virus is history. And we also thought that it would be interesting to let this thought stream to unfold on its own, sort of randomly, letting each guest invite the next one, hence the challenge. So our latest guest, Rashi Sodia, co-founder of Conscious Capitalism, invited Nilima Bhatt to be our next guest. So she was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately, she is not feeling well, so she won't be able to join us. The good news is that we've been able to reschedule her for April 4th, and today we have another exceptional guest, Neha Sangwan. So Neha is an internal medicine physician who has a different approach to healthcare. To a great extent, we can say that our health system is more of a sick care system, which instead of preventing problems, fixes them after they occur. So Neha's approach, on the other hand, is based on combining the science of medicine and the art of communication to solve complex problems and foster health and happiness before illnesses arise. So with that, I'd like to welcome Neha Sangwan. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Neha, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Xavier. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, so we're gonna get started. Before we go, I would like to invite our audience to send us their questions via chat, whether you are attending on Zoom or via YouTube. Please send us your questions. Our team will collect them, and time permitting, we'll try to address some of them at the end of the interview. So let's get it started. So Neha, you're a very busy woman. You're always up and down. You're a speaker. You're a writer. You don't know what getting bored means. How's life? How's life treating you?
Well, so it's really a mix right now. I call it a family of emotions that I'm experiencing. So it's kind of like around the holidays, you get together with family, and there's a mix of, wow, thank goodness, we're getting to all slow down and connect. And then there's also this piece of like, oh, Uncle Bob is coming too. Right? Like there's this whole mix of emotions. And I feel the same way right now. To me, this is a much needed pause in the world and in my life. And what I'd say to that as well is it has also been, so where it's a blessing and I needed to slow down and not travel, I'm getting more time to create. And at the same time, it feels restrictive and confining. And the things I want to do, like go out for a walk or see someone with the time that I have, I can't do that in the way that I'd like to. So if I go on a walk, I put on gloves and a mask. Well, that's not really why I go on a walk. I go on a walk because I want to breathe in fresh air.
Right.
And so I have all this time to do the things that I said I would do if I had time, and I'm having to do them in a different way. And so in that regard, it feels a bit restricted while it feels spacious.
Right. So I guess there's always a glass half empty and half full. I think now we're experiencing our half empty glass. that didn't really pay attention to in the past, and now we are just with that part of the glass and miss the other half, right? In a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think
Okay.
that, if I really think of the totality of what's happening, um, I would say that so by training, I'm an engineer and I'm a physician. So there's the structured part of me that is the mechanical engineer. And then there is the health side of this, that's the physician, the compassionate part of me, that really looks at each individual in the eye, tries to look beneath the physical crisis that's going on and see what their soul needs for growth, right? And
Mhm.
how we can help, not just help their physical body get better, but help them grow and expand their perspective. So, in that light, what I would say is, I now look at the people who stock the shelves of the grocery store, who deliver my food, who are in the building that I live in, taking care of us with the packages and the mail. I have such an expanded perspective of reverence, and I view them as heroes. I view them as, people call it essential workers. Essential, I think, is fine. I think it's more than that. I think it's the people who continue working so that we can continue to get information, continue to get food, sustain ourselves. And so this expanded perspective of seeing people as someone who is doing an hourly job or maybe didn't need to go to college for what it is they're doing, they have been elevated in my heart and mind to heroes. And
Mhm.
so now, what I believe this has done is given us an opportunity to make each connection sacred. And what I mean by that is, if I were to ask you, Zavi, maybe 3 months ago, "Hey, how are you, Zavi?" And you said, "Great, fine. How about you, Neha?" And I'd say, "Oh, fine." Now, when I call you, I say, "No, how are you? How really are you?" It's a different level of depth that we are moving towards in our human connection, in the similarity to which we see one another. I used to think of doctors and nurses as the heroes who came in and saved someone from a heart attack or a stroke or a pneumonia. I now look at that and I see heroes everywhere.
Nice. So this is obviously probably, if not the largest, one of the largest health crises humanity has faced, at least in the last 100 years. So
Mhm.
from a doctor's perspective, how do you think the world should change after the crisis is over? What is this crisis teaching us? And how we should change from a healthcare system point of view, from a sanitarian point of view, what things should be different after this is over?
Hmm. Zavi, I would actually say that the transformation is occurring now. So, one way we can look at that is, how should the world be different when this is over? Well, that depends on what's happening right now. Are you someone that's watching this and you're choosing to endure this for however many weeks, days, weeks, months it will be? Are you choosing to endure it by using your time tested coping strategies of, maybe eating your favorite food and watching your favorite Netflix, right? That's enduring something. And nothing's wrong with those things as long as they are one piece of how you are handling this, not the entire strategy, right? Um, I forgot to tell you in the question before this that I believe changing our collective behavior is, I even think the heroes are the people who are doing social distancing and staying at home because they know it's better for themselves and for other people. And so, in that regard, here we are in the current moment, either deciding to change how we behave and think of not just ourselves, but the collective, um, But the change has to happen now. We can't just endure this experience and think on the other end we're going to show up transformed. Transformation is happening every day, every minute, as we go through this crisis. So the question I would ask the people listening is, how has this crisis changed your behavior? How is this crisis expanding your perspective? What strategies did you used to use that maybe you can't use anymore? Maybe you were someone who was a really busy executive flying all over the world to important meetings and doing all these things. And now you're at home with your whole family 24/7. So when we get stripped of the coping mechanisms that allow us to exist and keep the patterns in place that we've got going, they worked for us for many years. When those are taken away from us, who are you then?
Right. So basically now you're talking at an individual level, how each of us can do to take this as an opportunity to change ourselves, to transform ourselves for the better. But a lot of people will say, yeah, that's great, very nice, but we live in a system. And a lot of people are under the impression that the system is not really helping getting out of the crisis. When you see, especially in the US, where you're on right now, you see states bidding against each other for respirators. I was talking to a friend of mine in New York City the other day, and he was telling me how face masks that a few weeks ago cost 50 cents, today cost like $6.50 or $7.50. So I think that when you see this kind of stuff is when people start wondering if the line that separates free market from the wild market is getting thinner and thinner every time. What do you have to say about that?
So you know how earlier I was talking about how we come out of this is going to be determined by how we experience this. Individually, a lot of us are isolated, so we're having our own experience of what's happening. Now, collectively, our individual choices are making an impact, whether it's Italy, whether it's the UK or the US, anywhere in the world. Our collective behavior, even if we're not talking or interacting with each other, is affecting whether we flatten the curve or not. So individual behavior does influence systems. Now, when I talk about expanding perspective, let me explain what I mean by that. So there's me expanding my own perspective. There's we, and together us collaborating like you and I are doing right now. This was born of your desire to help the we and the world. And so you contacted me and you said, hey, would you be willing to do this for the world? So the we expanded, you and I, and so that we could impact the world. So really what I want to make sure I clarify in this expanded perspective is I need to heal me through this crisis. I need to serve the we, and I need to impact the world on a greater level. The only way that I can do that is if those things are aligned vertically. When I am somebody who believes, really, I'm going to act like I'm for the we in the world, but really it's about profits and me gouging prices so that I can make the most money I know how to make on masks. That's not a true alignment of healing yourself, serving the we, and impacting the world. That's not true alignment. Some people may make it look like that's what it is, but the truth will come out in these moments. And to me, when I think about the free market, I think about capitalism. To me, capitalism is a tool. It's a tool like technology is a tool. How you use it is up to you. Technology can be used to divide us and isolate us at the same dinner table. Technology can be used to help oppressed people rise to freedom. How you use the technology is what actually matters more than the technology itself. So to me, capitalism and free market are a way that we can serve each other, care for each other, and meet each other's needs, right? Raj Sisodia says this often. It's a way that we can care about each other at scale,
Right.
if that's how we choose to use it. So it's a choice how you use this. You just mentioned politics too. Let me just give you a quick piece on this. Another expansion of perspective is, in the US, there's been some trends thinking that big government's bad, it's useless, let's dismantle it, let's get rid of it, right? Well, coronavirus has shown us the value of having a coordinated federal response to a pandemic. So it's almost like what this virus is doing is it's turning everything we thought we knew upside down. So it's like this: caring for your parents and elderly people in your life is now staying away from them and not hugging them. That government that we thought was too big and too cumbersome could enact private sector to be making the tests and the masks and everything we need. The reason there's this competition, this free market competition that people are talking about, is because in a vacuum where we don't have that coordinated response, it's almost becoming a free-for-all where profits are at the forefront over people and caring for them and their needs. So as a doctor, I'm having the hardest time with being someone who cares deeply to serve other people and not feeling like I can do that safely if I can't take care of myself with the proper protection. And so always paying attention to heal me, serve we, impact world, and aligning all of those.
So at the end of the day, as you were saying, it's a question of choice, and that actually resonates very much with the principles of conscious capitalism. As you said, we believe that capitalism is a tool, and it depends on how you choose to use that tool, that you get one output or the opposite output. Now, what we are seeing is that on top of the problem I mentioned before, that some people see capitalism turning the free market into the wild market and actually not helping in a situation like this. To make matters worse, it sounds, or it looks like there's starting to be some strong evidence that let's call it the wild market, not to use the word capitalism, but it looks like this wild market could actually be the actual cause of the crisis we're living. Apparently, all these growing outbreaks of viruses coming from Asia, remember the avian influenza, the SARS, now the coronavirus, these originate mostly from Asia, and the evidence suggests that the reason why this is happening is because of all these intensive animal farming, especially chicken, in all over the world, but particularly in China, which are becoming experimentation labs for viruses. They recreate the perfect conditions, the perfect storm for viruses to mutate, reproduce, and incubate new strands that become more and more dangerous for humanity. So it looks like it's not only that capitalism sometimes, or the wild market, doesn't help, but it actually can be the source of this crisis. So being a health crisis originated in this manner, what is your perspective on how capitalism should change in order to prevent this from happening in the future? We obviously defend this vision of conscious capitalism. We put consciousness up front because we believe in the idea that consciousness is all that's needed, and that resonates with what you mentioned before, that it's a matter of choice. If you choose to use the tool properly, you will not make stupid decisions. So is that what you were trying to explain before?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it stupid decisions, but I would certainly say that the world will give us feedback on whether what we're doing is working or not working. And it's almost like, well, when we were talking about what's good, not like what's good and what's bad. Um, I believe that a weakness is just a strength overused. So is it important that we advance science, we create laboratory environments to be able to further our understanding of genetics and of how, bacteria spread, vaccinations, all these types of things? Is it important? Yes, it is. When it becomes our sole focus, without having that broader perspective of we and world, it becomes our greatest liability. And so the way that you bring something back from a weakness back into a strength is you just pull back on it, pull back a little bit on what you're doing in order to change it back into the strength that it once was. And so one thing that's really evident now is this world is incredibly connected. Every one of us is incredibly connected as one system, not just across races and genders and political beliefs. This virus is taking it down to a human level, but not even just a human level. It's teaching us that we are also connected to the animal world and nature, and how we interact with the earth, the animals, nature, and each other is the level of complexity of what we are speaking about. And to what degree do we manipulate genetics, laboratory testing, and all of these experiences? Why don't we look at to what point is it beneficial? And at what point does this strength become a weakness? And so the
Mhm.
biggest thing that I think we're getting out of the coronavirus is, can each of us individually and collectively expand our perspectives to hold more than one idea at once? Can we hold me, we world? Can we figure out what is needed in the now, the short term, and the long term? So if we can not only, on our y axis align with the me, we world, but also on the x axis deal with now, short term, and long term. If we can expand our perspective on that level, individually and collectively, we will solve this crisis. We will become closer to one another. We will see our common humanity. We will collaborate on a level we have never seen, and we will be prepared for whatever the next pandemic is. And we will trust ourselves to handle it and handle it expeditiously.
I think you just mentioned one of the most important keywords of this crisis, collaboration, right?
Mhm.
Talking again about capitalism, capitalism has always been meant to work on the basis of competition, right? Or at least a lot of
Mhm.
people understands capitalism in this way. We at Conscious Capitalism believe more in collaboration, not that competition does not exist. Definitely, competition
Mhm.
is part of business, but we don't believe competition should be the driver of business. And if one thing has shown us, the coronavirus, is the power of collaboration, right? I think that probably we had never seen anything like this. The entire humanity, probably we have hundreds of millions of people joining forces all over the world, trying to solve a common problem, trying to defeat a common enemy. And that's happening in the medical and scientific field. So that's your field, actually.
Mhm.
So I guess that's something to be proud of, seeing that in the field of medicine,
Mhm.
people are breaking borders, and borders, at least for this period, have completely disappeared between
Mhm.
scientists and doctors that used to compete before for pharmaceutical industries and the likes. And today, now everybody is collaborating. This is the greatest thing that we've seen since the beginning of capitalism.
So, Zavi, you bring up such a great point, right? Once again, I would tell you that competitive, the word competition, depending on how it's used, determines your outcome. So I consider myself very competitive. I play a game and I want to win the game, right? Whatever it is. But healthy competition is me competing to become the best version of myself, me competing in the highest level of creativity and collaboration with others, me using my competitors' successes and innovations to inspire me to match or increase that generosity, that creativity, that level of goodness that I can have if I focus on the people that I serve. In the world right now, you make such an excellent point, which is our competition has transformed into collaboration on a new level. In medicine, taking care of a patient always requires a team. I, as a doctor, can't do it all myself. I'm not even with the patient more than 15 minutes a day. And I rely on the assistants who check the vitals, the nurses who are dealing with the urine outputs and documenting the vital sign changes. In the end, we all need each other. It's an artificial separation to think that if I am a successful business owner, I did it on my own. You didn't. You didn't do it on your own. And if that is the mindset that we have, it's one of separation and isolation, not one of true collaboration. And so I think if we look around, we might be able to recognize how much collaboration we've already needed. And I would ask the people, watching, wherever you have gotten in your life, take each stage, high school, college, if you've gone to college, building a business, and look at it as, ask yourself, who were all the people that helped you get there? Because whether it's your parents, whether it's your best friend who helped you study and get through that exam, whether it's the funding of a venture capital that helped you get started, you didn't do this on your own. And I think
Right.
this is a huge reminder of that.
Yes. I think we're running out of time. So Berta, are there any questions from the audience? So we have time for one or two at least.
Hi, we don't have none at the moment, but yeah, I would encourage anyone on the audience here on Zoom or on YouTube to send us their questions, because we are reading them. And we would
Waiting
love
for your questions, guys.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you
some
if you guys are open to it, the most common question I get asked.
Go ahead.
The most common question I get asked is, how do I handle this level of anxiety, whether it's in themselves or whether it's in their family members, their children, their colleagues, their employees. And I believe that this crisis is now how I told you, it's me, we world, and then now short-term, long-term. In that diagram right now, what needs to happen is us elevating our ability to sit in and manage anxiety and stress at a new level. And so let me just give a little quick summary of anxiety here. So anxiety is a future-based emotion. If you're someone who can't sleep at night, you find yourself up at night ruminating about certain things. If you're someone who goes to the worst case scenario to try to protect yourself from it happening, if you're someone who starts to say words such as, what if this? What if that happened? What if? That is the beginning of fear that leads into anxiety. And anxiety is a fear, right? It's actually a failed attempt to control the future when you think about it. So it's in times of uncertainty, someone is desperately trying to control the uncertain, the unknown. If you're someone who's saying, when is this going to end? Tell me how this is going to be in the end when it's all over. I think the virus is the one that's going to tell us how long this is going to last. I think the virus and our behavior, a combination of the virus and our individual and collective behavior, will answer those questions. And if we get it wrong, if we all start to open up and communicate again and go into gatherings too soon, we'll get feedback that will tell us that.
Definitely. I think, well, we're out of time, but we have one question. So it's going to be our last question for you today. Berta, go ahead.
So Francesca, well, she starts by saying thank you for everything and your knowledge today. And she says how the feminine can be unleashed differently and contribute to accelerate the societal expenditure during the crisis.
What a beautiful question. So thank you, Francesca. So when we are forming, when we are in utero, boys, right, to an XY chromosome and girls XX. How we develop in later stages of our incubation, boys get more testosterone and girls get more oxytocin, right? And it's interesting that oxytocin is a tend and befriend hormone. Now, when you talk about feminine and masculine, one thing to be careful about is however you identify, whoever you are, you have both sides in you. You have a masculine set of traits and a feminine set of traits. Oxytocin is why mothers have for many generations, for centuries, brought community together. They're the ones who are often in charge of family, although that's changing a lot in our society over the last several decades. But that oxytocin is what we attribute to friend and befriend, tend and befriend. And so one example that was given to us in medical school is if a building, is on fire, oftentimes if someone has more masculine traits, that are more dominant, right? Accomplishing, getting things done, taking care of things, they will get out of that building. And at the same time, the more feminine side of them could say, okay, does everybody have your coat, your shoes? Okay, come on, let's all go, right? It's like we all have the capability to develop both sides of this experience. And in our world, it has been about success, profits, indicating how successful you are, how much you do and how busy you are being what's important. And guess what? Mother Nature decided to hit pause on all of that and say, here's some time to develop the more connecting, the slower, the more feminine traits in us. And I think this is a game change. If we can use this to balance ourselves out, we are going to be an even more well-balanced society.
Beautiful question for a beautiful beautiful answer for a beautiful question. So I guess with that, we come to the end of the interview. And of course, we're going to end with the last question we always end up with, which is, who would you like us to interview next? Why and what question would you like to ask him or her?
So I would like, I think Susan Sabet would be a great person to interview. She's an incredible leader who exemplifies not only the masculine side of her traits, which is the doing and accomplishing. For 14 years, she was the president of American Express. She ran a global company with thousands and thousands of people reporting to her. And at the same time, I worked with her during that time, and I watched how she equally made important everybody's personal development, their individual growth, and their feminine aspects of themselves. Developing that was equally important to her as a leader. So what I would ask her now is, in this next phase, in this disruptive energy that we're in, how are you using that level of balanced leadership that you carry, how are you using that in this crisis to help us evolve and change? And how do you use your experience of big business in ways that are unique? And how do you see this unfolding? I think should be an incredible global view of someone who uses both sides of the traits in masculine and feminine.
That's fantastic. I'm sure that Susan will be a great panelist and will make sure she gets your question. So, well, Neha, as I said before, unfortunately, we have to leave now. So I'd really like to thank you for taking time to be with us today, for sharing your thoughts, your inspiration. And we hope you the best. I think you're in Boston right now. I hope that the confinement treats you well, and that very soon we can all get out of this crisis together, as you said before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're so welcome.
And by the way, for the rest of the audience, I just wanted to remind you that our next session will be next Monday, and it will be with Bob Chapman. So we'll be posting the information soon in the website, and we hope to see you there. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you next week. Thank you.